I watched my CEO steal credit for my work, fire me in front of everyone, and then beg me to come back when my invention made him $50 million. But by then, it was too late. My name is Thaddeus, and I'm about to tell you the story of how I went from being the most trusted employee at Meridian Tech to the man who brought down the entire company. What happened to me could happen to anyone, and what I did next, well, you'll have to decide if I went too far. It all started on a rainy Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago. I was sitting in my tiny cubicle on the 15th floor, surrounded by empty coffee cups and crumpled papers. I'd been working for 3 days straight on something that would change everything. My eyes were burning, my back ached, but I couldn't stop. I was so close to cracking the code that had stumped our entire engineering team for months. The problem was simple but huge. Our company made smart home devices, but they all worked separately. Your smart lights couldn't talk to your smart thermostat. Your security system had no idea what your smart doorbell was doing. Customers hated it. They wanted one app to control everything in their house. Everyone said it was impossible. Too many different systems, too many companies involved. But I knew there had to be a way. I'd been at Meridian Tech for 6 years, started right out of college as a junior developer. While other guys my age were out partying, I was here, learning, growing, becoming the go-to person for impossible problems. I loved this place. I believed in what we were doing. Caspian Blackwood was our CEO. Tall, silver-haired, always wore expensive suits. He had this way of making you feel like you were part of something bigger. When he walked into a room, people stopped talking and paid attention. I respected him. Hell, I wanted to be like him someday. That Tuesday morning, I finally did it. I created a universal protocol that could make any smart device talk to any other smart device, no matter who made it. It was elegant, simple, and revolutionary. I called it the Unity Bridge. My hands were shaking as I ran the final test. The smart lamp on my desk dimmed automatically when the security camera detected motion in the hallway. The thermostat adjusted itself when the smart window sensors felt the temperature change outside. Everything was working together like a beautiful symphony. I couldn't wait to show Caspian. I printed out my documentation, gathered my prototype devices, and headed to the executive floor. My heart was pounding. This was it. This was my moment. 6 years of hard work, late nights, and believing in this company were about to pay off. Caspian's office was huge, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. He was on a phone call when I knocked, but he waved me in with a big smile. "Thaddeus, my favorite problem solver, what do you have for me today?" I set up my demonstration on his conference table. "Sir, I've solved the compatibility issue. I've created a way for all smart home devices to communicate seamlessly." His eyes lit up. "Show me." For the next 20 minutes, I walked him through everything. I showed him how the Unity Bridge worked, how it could be integrated into our existing products, how it would give us a massive advantage over our competitors. I explained the technical details, the market potential, the implementation timeline. Caspian was quiet the whole time, just nodding and taking notes. When I finished, he sat back in his leather chair and smiled. "Thaddeus, this is incredible. This could change everything for us." My chest swelled with pride. "Thank you, sir. I've been working on this for months. I think if we move quickly, we can have the first Unity Bridge products on the market within 6 months." "Absolutely. Leave all this with me. I need to think about the best way to move forward." I handed over my documentation, my prototypes, everything. "Should I continue working on the next phase?" No. Take a few days off. You've earned it. Let me handle things from here." I left his office feeling like I was walking on air. This was the breakthrough our company needed. This was going to make us rich and famous. I was going to be the guy who revolutionized smart home technology. That feeling lasted exactly 4 days. I came back to work on Monday morning to find my access card didn't work. The security guard, Marcus, looked embarrassed when he saw me trying to swipe in. "Sorry, Thaddeus. I've got orders not to let you up." "What? There must be some mistake." "You need to report to HR on the 3rd floor." My stomach dropped. I took the elevator down, my mind racing. Maybe it was just a security update. Maybe they needed to issue me a new card. The HR office was sterile and cold. Penelope from Human Resources was sitting behind her desk with a folder in front of her. She couldn't look me in the eye. "Thaddeus, please sit down." "Penelope, what's going on? My access card isn't working." She opened the folder. "We're terminating your employment, effective immediately." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What? Why?" "We've discovered that you've been using company resources for personal projects. Specifically, you've been working on unauthorized software development during company time." I couldn't breathe. "Personal projects? I've been working on the Unity Bridge for the company, for Caspian." "We have no record of any authorized project called Unity Bridge. According to our investigation, you've been developing this software for your own purposes, likely to sell to competitors." "That's insane. I showed Caspian everything. He has all my documentation." Penelope slid a piece of paper across the desk. "This is your termination letter. You're also being required to sign this non-disclosure agreement regarding any work you did while employed here." My hands were shaking as I read the NDA. It was ironclad. I couldn't talk about anything I'd worked on at Meridian Tech. I couldn't even mention the Unity Bridge to anyone. "I'm not signing this." "Then we'll be forced to pursue legal action for theft of company property and industrial espionage." I stared at her. This couldn't be real. 6 years of loyalty, of believing in this company, and they were treating me like a criminal. "I want to talk to Caspian." "Mr. Blackwood is unavailable. Please sign the document and surrender your company laptop and phone." I felt sick. They were stealing my work and throwing me out like garbage. But I was trapped. I couldn't afford a legal battle against a company with unlimited resources. I signed the paper. Security escorted me to my cubicle to collect my personal belongings. My coworkers stared as I packed my few possessions into a cardboard box. Some looked confused. Others looked away, embarrassed for me. Waverly, who sat in the cubicle next to mine, whispered, "What happened?" "I can't talk about it," I said, my voice barely working. The security guard walked me to the lobby and out the front door. Just like that, 6 years of my life were over. I sat in my car in the parking lot for an hour, trying to understand what had just happened. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Quentin, who still worked at Meridian. "Dude, what happened? Word is spreading that you were fired for stealing company secrets." I started to type a response, then stopped. The NDA. I couldn't say anything. I drove home to my small apartment, feeling numb. I called my parents, but I couldn't explain what had really happened. I just told them I'd been laid off. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Caspian, about how he'd smiled when I showed him the Unity Bridge, how he'd praised my work, how he'd told me to take a few days off while he figured out the best way to move forward. The best way to move forward was to steal my work and fire me. 2 weeks later, I was still unemployed, still trying to figure out what to do with my life, when I saw the news. Meridian Tech had announced a revolutionary new product line. Smart home devices that could all work together seamlessly through something called the Unity Bridge. I threw my laptop across the room. There was Caspian on the company website, standing next to my invention, taking credit for my work. The press release called it a breakthrough innovation developed by our talented engineering team under the visionary leadership of CEO Caspian Blackwood. They'd stolen everything. My code, my documentation, my idea. And they'd made me sign a legal document that prevented me from saying a word about it. I spent the next 3 months in a dark place. I couldn't find work because word had spread in the tech community that I'd been fired for stealing company secrets. Every interview ended the same way. "We've heard some concerning things about your departure from Meridian Tech." I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't tell them the truth. My savings ran out. I had to move back in with my parents in their tiny apartment. At 28 years old, I was sleeping on the couch where I'd spent my teenage years, watching my career crumble because I'd been too trusting. But something was growing inside me, something dark and powerful. It wasn't just anger anymore, it was determination. They'd taken everything from me, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd taught me exactly how their system worked. I started working at a coffee shop downtown, just to have some income. But every free moment, I was planning, I was learning, I was preparing for the day when I could take back what was mine. The Unity Bridge products launched 6 months after I was fired. They were an instant success. Everything I'd predicted came true. Customers loved being able to control all their smart home devices through one app. The technology press called it revolutionary. Meridian Tech's stock price doubled overnight. I watched from my parents' couch as Caspian gave interview after interview, taking credit for my work. He talked about his vision for the future of smart homes. He talked about the innovative engineering team that had made it all possible. He never mentioned my name, but I noticed something in those interviews. Something that made my heart race with possibility. Caspian was already talking about the next phase. He was promising investors that Meridian Tech would expand the Unity Bridge to work with cars, with office buildings, with entire cities. The problem was, I'd never finished that part of the code. I'd only created the foundation for home devices. Everything else was still just an idea in my head. And I was the only person who knew how to build it. That's when I realized I had something they needed. Something they couldn't steal because it didn't exist yet. And that's when I started planning my revenge. I quit the coffee shop and spent every dollar I had left on a plane ticket to Silicon Valley. I had an idea that would either make me rich or destroy me completely. But first, I needed to find someone who hated Caspian Blackwood as much as I did. It took me 3 weeks to track down Ophelia Ravencrest. She was a former Meridian Tech executive who'd been forced out 2 years earlier. Rumor was she and Caspian had been partners, both personally and professionally, until he'd stabbed her in the back over a business deal. Now she was running a small tech startup out of a converted warehouse in Oakland. When I walked into her office, she looked exactly like someone who'd been betrayed by the same man who'd betrayed me. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, and a smile that could cut glass. "Thaddeus Merrick," she said before I could introduce myself. "The genius who created the Unity Bridge." I froze. "How did you—" "I still have friends at Meridian. I know exactly what Caspian did to you." She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I sat down, my heart pounding. I want to destroy him. Her smile got wider. "Now we're talking." Ophelia leaned back in her chair, studying me like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the Unity Bridge, about how I'd trusted Caspian, about the firing, the NDA, the months of unemployment. I told her about watching him take credit for my work while I served coffee to strangers. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she opened her laptop and showed me something that made my blood run cold. Meridian stock has tripled since the Unity Bridge launch. They're valued at over $2 billion now, and Caspian just announced they're going public next year. My invention had made him a billionaire. But here's the beautiful part, Ophelia continued. He's promised investors that the next phase of Unity Bridge will launch in 6 months. Smart cars, smart buildings, smart cities. He's taking pre-orders worth $50 million. $50 million? $50 million. And according to my sources inside the company, they have no idea how to build it. They've been trying to reverse engineer your original code to create the expanded version, but they're stuck. I felt something dangerous stirring in my chest. Hope mixed with rage. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we give Caspian exactly what he deserves. But first, let me tell you what he did to me." Ophelia's story was heartbreaking. She and Caspian had been partners for 8 years, building Meridian Tech from nothing. They'd been lovers too, planning to get married once the company went public. But when a major investor wanted to buy in, the investor demanded that only one person could be CEO. Caspian chose power over love. He forced Ophelia out, kept her shares for almost nothing, and married the investor's daughter 6 months later. "He took my company, my future, and my heart," she said. "But unlike you, I couldn't create something he needed. Until now." She pulled out a folder thick with documents. "I've been planning this for 2 years. I have investors ready to fund a competing company. I have a team of engineers ready to jump ship from Meridian. And now I have you, the one person who can build what Caspian promised but can't deliver. What exactly are you proposing?" "We start our own company. We build the real next-generation Unity Bridge, and we launch it 1 week before Caspian's promised launch date. The plan was brilliant and terrifying. We would call our company Nexus Systems. I would be the chief technology officer. Ophelia would be CEO. We'd poach Meridian's best engineers, build the expanded Unity bridge that actually worked, and destroy Caspian's public offering by proving his product was fake. "It's not just about revenge," Ophelia explained as we walked through the empty warehouse that would become our headquarters. "It's about justice. You created something revolutionary, and he stole it. Now we're going to show the world who the real innovator is." I signed the partnership agreement that night. The next 6 months were the hardest of my life, but also the most exciting. We worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week. Ophelia's investors provided enough funding to hire 12 of Meridian's best engineers, people who'd been frustrated by Caspian's leadership and jumped at the chance to work somewhere that valued their contributions. My favorite new team member was Phoenix, a brilliant young programmer who'd been ignored at Meridian despite her incredible talent. She'd been working on machine learning algorithms that could predict user behavior, but Caspian had dismissed her ideas as too complicated for consumers. "Finally, someone who gets it," she said on her first day. "Caspian thinks technology should be dumbed down, but users are smarter than he gives them credit for." Building the expanded Unity bridge was like conducting an orchestra. Every smart device would need to communicate not just with other devices in the same building, but with devices across entire city networks. A smart traffic light could coordinate with your car's GPS to optimize your route. Your home security system could communicate with your office building to automatically adjust your work schedule if there was an emergency. It was the future I'd always dreamed of building. But we weren't just building technology, we were building a trap. Ophelia had maintained contacts inside Meridian Tech. Every week, she'd get updates on their progress, or lack thereof. Caspian had hired 3 different consulting firms to try to reverse engineer my original Unity bridge code and expand it. All 3 had failed. "He's getting desperate," Ophelia told me one evening as we reviewed the latest intelligence. "His head of engineering quit last week. The pre-order customers are getting impatient, and the investors are starting to ask tough questions." "Good," I said. "Let him sweat." But I'll admit, there were moments when I felt guilty. Some of the people who would suffer when Meridian collapsed were good people. Engineers I'd worked with for years, support staff who'd always been kind to me. Phoenix noticed my mood one day and sat down next to me. "You're thinking about the collateral damage." "How did you know?" "Because you're a good person. That's why we're all here. We believe in you, not just your technology." She was right. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about showing the world that innovation comes from passionate individuals, not from corporate executives who steal other people's work. As our launch date approached, the pressure intensified. Ophelia had scheduled a massive product demonstration for tech journalists and investors. We'd invited everyone, including Caspian. 1 week before our demo, Ophelia got a call that changed everything. "You need to see this," she said, bursting into my office with her laptop. On her screen was a press release from Meridian Tech. They were moving up their launch date. Instead of launching in 2 weeks as promised, they were launching in 3 days, 4 days before our demonstration. "How is that possible?" I asked. "They don't have a working product." Ophelia's face was grim. "They don't need one. They're going to fake it." She showed me leaked internal emails from her contacts inside the company. Caspian had decided to stage a completely fake product demonstration using pre-recorded videos and scripted scenarios. He was gambling that he could fool investors and the press long enough to complete the public offering, then use that money to actually build the product later. "He's going to commit fraud to cover up his theft," I said. "And if it works, he'll be untouchable. Billionaires don't go to jail for stealing from employees." That night, I couldn't sleep. Everything we'd worked for could be destroyed if Caspian's fake demo convinced people his product was real. Even if we launched a week later with the actual working technology, the market would think we were copying him. But then I remembered something I'd built into the original Unity bridge code that no one else knew about. I called Ophelia at 3 a.m. "I know how to stop him." The original Unity bridge had a hidden feature I'd never told anyone about. Call it programmer's pride or just good security practices, but I'd embedded a unique signature in every device that ran my code. It was invisible to users, but any Unity bridge device could detect and communicate with any other Unity bridge device, no matter who claimed to have made it. If Caspian was using my stolen code for his fake demonstration, I could prove it, live, in front of everyone. "Are you sure this will work?" Ophelia asked as we drove to Meridian's headquarters on the morning of their product launch. "Trust me," I said, checking the small device in my pocket. It was a prototype Unity Bridge Hub that could detect and interact with any device running my code. I built a backdoor into my own system. If he's using my technology, everyone's about to find out. The Meridian Tech demonstration was being held in their main conference room, with about 50 journalists, investors, and industry experts in attendance. Ophelia and I slipped in through the back, wearing fake press badges she'd somehow acquired. Caspian looked confident as he took the stage. He was wearing his most expensive suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. Behind him were enormous screens showing sleek graphics and promotional videos. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "today marks the beginning of a new era in smart technology. The Unity Bridge ecosystem will transform not just our homes, but our entire cities." I felt sick watching him. He was using my words, my vision, my dreams to sell a lie. The demonstration began. On the screens, we watched perfectly choreographed scenarios of smart homes, smart cars, and smart buildings, all working together seamlessly. It looked incredible and completely fake. But then, Caspian made a crucial mistake. To make the demonstration seem more real, he'd brought actual Unity Bridge devices, the ones built with my stolen code, and connected them to the presentation system. I quietly pulled out my prototype device and activated it. Immediately, chaos erupted on the screens behind Caspian. The fake promotional videos were replaced by diagnostic information showing the real source code of the Unity Bridge system. Line after line of my original programming scrolled across the screens, including timestamps that proved when it was written, months before I was fired. "What's happening?" Caspian shouted at his technical team. But it got worse. My device began overriding the connected Unity Bridge products, causing them to display their true information. The smart lights in the room began flashing in a pattern that spelled out "stolen" in Morse code. The speakers started playing a recording I'd embedded in the original code, my voice explaining the technical specifications of the Unity Bridge. The audience was stunned. Journalists were frantically taking notes. Investors were whispering urgently to each other. Caspian's face had gone completely white. He kept looking at his technical team for help, but they were just as confused as he was. Finally, I stood up. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said loudly, "my name is Thaddeus Merrick. I'm the real inventor of the Unity Bridge technology, and I can prove it." Security moved toward me, but the journalists were already shouting questions. I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the room's presentation system, overriding their controls completely. On the screens, I displayed the original Unity Bridge development files, complete with timestamps, version histories, and my digital signature on every piece of code. I showed my original documentation, my prototype videos, even photos of me working in my Meridian Tech cubicle with early versions of the hardware. Caspian Blackwood stole my invention, fired me to cover it up, and has been lying to investors for months about having technology that doesn't exist, I announced. The room erupted. Journalists were standing on chairs trying to get better photos. Investors were shouting questions at Caspian. Someone started live streaming the whole thing on social media. Caspian tried to regain control. "This man is a former employee who was terminated for cause. He's clearly engaged in some kind of hacking." "Then explain this," I interrupted, pulling up the NDA I'd signed. "Explain why you made me sign a non-disclosure agreement if I was just stealing company secrets. Explain why the technology you're demonstrating today includes code that was written before my termination date." I could see Caspian calculating, trying to find a way out. But there wasn't one. The evidence was overwhelming and public. "Furthermore," I continued, "the expanded Unity Bridge technology you've been promising investors doesn't exist. You've taken $50 million in pre-orders for a product you can't build, but I can." That's when Ophelia stood up from her seat in the audience. "Which is why we're launching the real next-generation Unity Bridge next week," she announced. "From Nexus Systems, founded by the actual inventor of this technology." The room went completely silent. Then everyone started talking at once. We walked out of that conference room and straight into a media storm. By the time we got back to our warehouse headquarters, there were news vans outside, and my phone was ringing non-stop. The story exploded across tech news, business media, and social platforms. That Unity Bridge scandal was trending within hours. Videos of Caspian's failed demonstration were viewed millions of times. But the real earthquake came 3 days later. The Securities and Exchange Commission announced they were investigating Meridian Tech for securities fraud. The $50 million in pre-orders were frozen pending the investigation. 3 major investors pulled out completely. Meridian's stock price crashed by 80% in a single day. Our demonstration the following week was the complete opposite of Caspian's disaster. The expanded Unity Bridge worked flawlessly. Smart cars communicated with traffic systems to optimize routes in real time. Office buildings automatically adjusted lighting and temperature based on occupancy patterns. Emergency services could coordinate across entire city networks. The press called it the most impressive technology demonstration in a decade. We had customers lined up around the block, including most of the companies that had pulled their pre-orders from Meridian. 6 months later, Nexus Systems was valued at $3 billion. We'd hired over 200 employees, including dozens of former Meridian workers. Phoenix had become our chief innovation officer, leading a team developing even more advanced connectivity solutions. But the sweetest moment came when I got a phone call I'd been expecting for months. "Thaddeus, it's Caspian." I'd dreamed about this conversation, but now that it was happening, I felt strangely calm. "What do you want, Caspian?" "I want to apologize, and I want to offer you your job back, as Chief Technology Officer, full equity package, whatever you want." I almost laughed. "You're offering me a job at a company that's about to be bankrupt? We can rebuild. Together, like we should have done from the beginning. You had that chance. You chose to steal my work and destroy my life instead." There was a long pause. "I made a mistake, Thaddeus. I was scared of losing control, of sharing credit, but I see now that you were the real genius behind everything we built. You're right, I was, and now I'm building something better without you. Please, the company is dying. My investors are gone. I'm going to lose everything." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "You should have thought about that before you betrayed the person who trusted you most." I hung up. 3 weeks later, Meridian Tech declared bankruptcy. Caspian lost his house, his cars, everything. Last I heard, he was working as a sales manager at a small electronics store in the suburbs. The investigation revealed that he'd been lying to investors for years about various products and capabilities. He was facing criminal charges for securities fraud and conspiracy. Meanwhile, Nexus Systems continued to grow. We went public 18 months after our launch, raising over $1 billion. I kept my promise to take care of the good people who'd been hurt when Meridian collapsed. We hired anyone who wanted to join us and needed a job. But the most satisfying part wasn't the money or the success. It was proving that innovation and integrity could win over theft and deception. Today, the Unity Bridge ecosystem connects over 50 million devices worldwide. Smart cities from Tokyo to Toronto use our technology to create more efficient, safer, and more sustainable urban environments. And every single one of those devices carries a tiny piece of code that identifies me as its true creator. Sometimes people ask if I went too far, if ruining Caspian's life was worth it. But I didn't ruin his life. He did that himself when he chose to steal instead of collaborate, when he chose greed over integrity. I just made sure the truth came out. The real lesson isn't about revenge. It's about never giving up on what's right, even when the whole world seems stacked against you. It's about surrounding yourself with people who believe in your vision, not just your bank account. And it's about remembering that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so amazing that your enemies become irrelevant. 6 years ago, I was sleeping on my parents' couch, thinking my career was over. Today, I'm the CEO of a company that's changing the world. Caspian thought he could steal my future. Instead, he just delayed it long enough for me to dream bigger. And that $50 million he lost? That was just the beginning. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being so successful that your betrayer becomes nothing more than a cautionary tale. Thaddeus didn't just get even, he got everything he deserved and more. If this story inspired you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, and also drop a comment below.